You want to know the most important thing in life? Timing. Timing is everything, and today's video is probably the greatest example of why that is the case. For every fighter we discuss on this list, if they'd have fought at any other time besides when they did, they'd unequivocally be champion, the greatest fighter in their division of their era. But that wasn't the case. For everybody today, there was also that one guy that they couldn't overcome, or if they lasted long enough, multiple guys. But the through line is the same. Not a soul doubted that these fighters were better than everybody but the champion. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are 10 fighters that were stuck being second best. A quick note about, well, specifically Tony Ferguson. Because there was sort of this greatness triangle between he, Khabib, and Conor, he wasn't a definitive number 2, and so he's not what we're looking for. These fighters were clearly second with no question about it, and they could never overcome who was first. Alright, number 10, chaotic neutral. Always the bridesmaid and never the bride, Colby Covington is the ultimate welterweight runner-up. Colby tore up the rankings relatively quickly with his insane cardio and high output, racking up wins over Damian Maia, Brazil You're a Dump, RDA, and Robbie Lawler before entering the title picture. With this run came interim gold and beef with champ Tyron Woodley that he'd ultimately have to transfer over to new champion Kamaru Usman. Their first fight's one of the best the division's ever had. However you feel about Colby, that fight was incredible, but of course he would fall just short, getting stopped right at the end. 2 years later, he would get his rematch and again, just could not get the job done. Usman was simply a better Colby Covington. Inexplicably, despite only having beat the ghosts of Tyron Woodley and Jorge Masvidal, Covington was given a third chance to prove he was the best welterweight in the world when he got a shot at Leon Edwards, who had dethroned his rival. Unfortunately, Chaos was anything but his nickname that night, and Leon would take the husk of Covington to church. Was Colby elite? No question. But sometimes being elite isn't enough. Number 9, unbeatable John Fitch. I don't think people appreciate just how dominant John Fitch was at his peak. The dude absolutely burned through the UFC's welterweight division. 8 straight wins going into his title challenge with GSP. He had one of the longest win streaks in divisional history, and despite his reputation for overwhelming wrestling pressure, he had 3 finishes during that period too. He beat big names like Thiago Alves and Diego Sanchez, and despite his smothering, not-so-fan-friendly style, his streak was undeniable, and he got his shot at GSP. It's a testament to just how stupidly good St. Pierre is, because he wiped the floor with Fitch.
That's about as unanimous as it can be.
Absolutely unequivocal domination. Now, given his style and the champion's decimation of him, you knew it would take Fitch a long time to get back to the title, but he went on winning, taking 5 in a row after that loss.
I think I've made the changes I need to. I feel I'm ready for a title shot.
After that, cracks formed. He had the weird draw with BJ Penn, and far more devastating, the 12-second KO by Johnny Hendricks, which officially ended his time as the second best guy at 170 pounds. But for a while, it was absolutely John Fitch, and the fact that GSP did what he did to him really is a feather in the cap, and shows just how wide the gap was between him and the rest of the pack. Number 8, absolute money. I'm curious in time what the legacy of Chad Mendes will be, because he's arguably the greatest featherweight to never be champion. The guy was a monster. Powerhouse wrestling, serious power in his right hand. When he first showed up, he tore through 145. Undefeated, looking like he was going to dethrone the King of Rio in Rio, but of course, one of the nastiest title fight knees we've ever seen, and a cage grab, but that's neither here nor there, would be a very quick end for Money Mendez's initial run at Jose Aldo.
Jose Aldo knocks out Chad Mendes.
A devastating loss for someone with so much hype, but instead of fading and losing that momentum, he went on a 5-fight tear and just killed everybody on his way back to Jose, and this time around, he wouldn't succumb to a quick finish. It would be one of the greatest fights the division's ever seen, an all-time classic. He gave everything to Aldo that night and was nearly perfect, just not perfect enough. While it looked like that might be his last chance to prove greatness, that interim title fight with Conor McGregor fell right into his lap. Unfortunately, it did at the worst possible time, and he simply wasn't ready. Despite a solid first round effort, he'd get beat, and when you pull back, the only fighters that ever beat Mendes in the UFC were champions. He wasn't the best, but he was always just one step behind them and gave Aldo the fight of his life. Number 7, hello there. If somebody were to write the history of the flyweight division in the UFC, one of the only through lines would be Joseph Benavidez being right there at the top. He is the through line. He was constantly the guy right below the guy. He made his flyweight debut coming off time near the top of bantamweight with a title challenge against Dominic Santa Cruz in the WEC. He fought DJ for the inaugural flyweight title in the final of that tournament to determine the champion, of course coming up short, but he followed that up by beating Uncle Creepy, the guy who arguably beat Mighty Mouse in that tournament. And the rest is truly flyweight history. Joe B would get a second shot at DJ's gold just a little over a year after the initial one and would get KO'd in the first round.
Best I ever felt. Worst result I've ever had in my life. If that's not motivation to train, I don't know what is.
But beyond that, he maintained an insanely strong grip on that division, beating anybody and everybody besides other top 5 mainstay John Dodson, but that was because they never fought. He had a massive victory over Henry Cejudo, and really his only losses beyond a questionable judging call in the Sergio Pettis fight and the last bout of his career, the man only ever lost to champions and maintained his place near the top through to 2020 when he had that pair of title bouts with Davis and Figueiredo. There is no way you can say that Joe B isn't one of the greatest flyweights of all time, despite never holding that gold. Number 6, the Adesanya problem. This is why this list was made, because if you erase Israel Adesanya from the UFC's record books, Bobby Knuckles is the greatest middleweight of his era. But unfortunately for Robert, he does exist. When Bobby moved up to 185, he wrecked shop and seemed to have all the pieces. The run of Brunson, Jacare, and double Ribeiro wins from 2016 to 2018, there was no question who was the top guy, even if Whitaker never once got to defend his title successfully, technically. And then along came a style bender. The way that Izzy took the gold from Robert was shocking. Adesanya had looked great, but felt untested in the way that Whitaker had with that Yoel gauntlet. It's a testament to just how good his run was that the loss was so shocking. After Izzy took the gold, Whitaker burned through 3, Till, Cannonier, and Gastelum to get back to Adesanya, but again would come up short. Not in devastating fashion this time, but there was no doubt who was the better of the two. Whitaker worked his way up to another title eliminator by beating Marvin Vettori, but succumbed to the weirdness that is DDP, who would of course go on to be champion. There's another timeline where Whitaker rules that division for 5 to 6 years, but we're not living in it. Number 5, Bad Guy Blues. Now, wait a second, why is Chael Sonnen on this list? He's undefeated and undisputed. I thought this was about the second best, not the greatest ever.
I'm not a martial artist, I am a gangster from Westland, Oregon.
Well, there's a small contingent of fans that think Anderson Silva was the greatest middleweight. I don't agree with them, but you know, they're a vocal minority. What's incredible about Sonnen's brief time at the very top of the middleweight division is how insanely close he was to moving beyond second best, and how ultimately it wouldn't have mattered anyway because Chael would defeat himself because he's the greatest. Sonnen took Dan Miller, Yushin Okami, and Nate Marquardt to earn his chance at the Spider, and oh, what a chance it was.
Oh, he tagged him! Again, he got him! I mean, is it too early for Chael to start celebrating? Triangle! Watch out! Triangle! This is trouble! He's tagging!
The last-second submission pulled off by Anderson Silva at his peak, in his prime, after he got beat pillar to post by the bad guy, was one of the most insane things that's ever happened in this sport, and ultimately, of course, would not have mattered in the end because Sonnen would fail his post-fight PED test anyway. But he came back from that suspension and proved why he was in that position, juice or not. He fought his way back, beat Michael Bisping, beat Brian Stan. He would fall short again against Silva in a far less successful bout, though, cementing his number 2 status. It's true, Chael P never wore UFC gold, but he sold it better than anyone ever has. Number 4, Kane's Retribution.
Big shot! It is all over! Junior Dos Santos, champion of the world!
It took a single punch for Junior Dos Santos to dethrone the heavyweight champion of the world, and it looked like his reign would be never-ending. After burning through the entire heavyweight division on his way up, culminating in the defeat of Shane Carwin, JDS's Fox debut destroying victory over Cain Velasquez looked absolute, and his resume would only strengthen when he defended gold against Frank Mir. But then Cain did something that would change the dynamic of their rivalry and the perception of the two fighters entirely. He would decimate Dos Santos so completely and so brutally, twice over, that there wasn't a single question about who was the greatest heavyweight of that generation. It was Cain Velasquez. The first win is now seen retroactively as a fluke flash KO by a lesser fighter. JDS has an insane resume though. Carwin, Verdum, Krokop, Mir, Hunt, Miocic, but he's not Cain Velasquez. For a brief, fleeting moment, he was the baddest man on the planet, but when you pull the larger picture back on the history of the heavyweight division, his reign was a footnote, and his place of significance the second best, the rival to the heavyweight king, Cain Velasquez. Number 3, Alex the Unconquerable. The crazy thing about greatness is that it doesn't always mean you're going to be on top. Max Holloway was there. He saw the top, the featherweight title, iconic victories. After losing to Conor in 2013, he would go on a 5-year tear and win 14 straight in the division, earning gold, beating Aldo twice, decimating Brian Ortega, and getting a victory over Frankie Edgar. There was nobody that could hang with this guy. Instant Hall of Famer once he retires. But for a 3-year stretch, Max was trapped, able to smash any featherweight in the division, but for the one that mattered most. From 2019 to 2022, Holloway would fight Alexander Volkanovski 3 times, and each time he walked away without any gold. Their first fight, Volk chopped Max down with leg kicks to earn the UD. The second fight, despite multiple knockdowns and looking infinitely better than their first, the judges would give Volk the nod again, not without controversy of course, but still a loss either way.
I think Max Holloway won the fight. He had done enough to win and get the belt back.
Fan incredulity never paid anybody's bills and doesn't grant you gold. What's crazy is after that, Max would do arguably his most iconic work in that God Mode Cater fight. But when it came to fighting Volk for the 3rd time, he had nothing for the great. The 3rd fight left absolutely no doubt who was the better of the 2 fighters. We'd seen a whole 15 rounds between them, and there was a clear answer. Insane to think that a prime Max Holloway was denied the top spot, but it's a testament to just how good Alex really is. Number 2, the only Emperor. There have been a few times when fighters got trunksed, as I like to call it, where everybody thought, oh, this is the baddest guy around, and then somebody else came along and just completely shattered that notion, like when Trunks cut Frieza in half with a single sword swing in Dragon Ball Z. It's a great analogy, trust me, and Minotauro Nogueira was that guy, that Frieza. With the UFC's heavyweight division in shambles, Nog debuting in Pride and beating Mark Coleman, Gary Goodridge, and Heath Herring had everybody saying, yeah, this is the best dude right here. After his epic showdown with Bob Sapp, he was already legend status. 19-1-1 heading into 2003. Who was beating this guy? It seemed as if nobody, but the answer was Fedor. For as much as was made about their first meeting being the clash of the 2 best, it wasn't as much a rivalry as it was a regime change. They fought 3 times, one that didn't count, and each of them, there was absolutely no doubt who was the better man, the king of the heavyweights. It was Fedor, which isn't to say that Nogueira dropped off or something. He kept destroying other killers, avenged his only non-Fedor loss to Josh Barnett. He was undeniably the second best. In so many different time periods, the guy would have ruled the sport, but unfortunately for him, his prime was also Emelianenko's, and there was just no overcoming him. Mirko Cro Cop also deserves a mention here. While his time as next best wasn't as long as Big Nog's, he shared the Brazilian's fate because the last emperor simply could not be dethroned. Number 1, Shadow Reign. The only reason that Daniel Cormier dropped down to 205 pounds was to beat John Jones.
You're the gum of the earth. You are a terrible human being. I wish they would let me next door so I could spit in your face.
Okay, he also did it to avoid an inevitable fight with his best friend Cain Velasquez as well, but the goal, the only goal when he got there was to beat John Jones, and he would do everything but that. After burning through non-challenges in Patrick Cummins and Dan Henderson, following his dominant run at heavyweight, DC was given this massively anticipated fight with Jones. Daniel was seen as the last hope. If anybody was ever going to beat John, it was him. The rivalry on fire. The build-up, legendary. The fight entirely one-sided. DC didn't have a prayer in that first fight, but not shortly after, fate would further intertwine Jones and Cormier when JBJ was stripped for being JBJ.
He's accused of running a red light over the weekend, hitting a pregnant woman's car, and then running away from the scene.
And DC would win the vacant title, reigning over the division in John's shadow until his eventual return 2.5 years later. This time around, Cormier saw more success, but a more devastating loss in the end, as he was brutally finished. When John was forced to give up the gold again for being John, DC defended his title one more time to leave no doubt that in the absence of Jones, Cormier was 205's king. He'd leave the division after that, cementing his heavyweight legacy, but there's no way to talk about who Daniel Cormier was at 205 pounds without talking about how he wasn't John Jones. You know who else isn't John Jones, but in a good way? The editor of this video, Max Randall. Please follow him on all his socials and go check out his awesome YouTube channel. The man is fantastic. A massive thank you to our channel members. Guys, you're seriously the best. Thank you so much. Fight fans, hit the join button, become a channel member. You get exclusive content. We've got writers meetings. I would highly recommend it. It's really fun. Like and subscribe for more awesome videos like this one because I do them all the time, damn it. Leave a comment about which of these number 2s you wish could have had their own era. And thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe out there.